Have you ever stopped to think about a newborn's very first, most powerful instinct? Well, we're about to dive into a really fascinating theory that suggests it's not what a baby sees, but what it feels that forges our very first bond in life. Let's unpack how this hidden instinct might work.
So our story doesn't start in a hospital nursery. Nope. It starts with a bunch of geese. And it's here, with these birds, that a simple, kind of funny observation revealed this profound instinct that might just be the key to one of the earliest moments in human development.
Okay, so picture it. A tiny little gosling finally cracks its way out of its shell, blinking in the bright light for the very first time. What's the first moving thing it lays its eyes on? You're probably thinking, well, its mother, of course. But what if it wasn't? Right, so in this now famous experiment, that first thing the gosling saw was often the scientist Konrad Lorenz. And what happened next was incredible. The newborn geese would just lock onto him. They'd follow him everywhere, totally convinced that he was their mom. This powerful, instantaneous bonding, that's called imprinting.
And here's the really crucial part. Imprinting is this lightning-fast learning process, and it's completely hardwired for survival. You know, there's this short, super sensitive window right after birth where a newborn just latches onto a parental figure to make sure it stays safe. For geese, it's all about what they see.
Okay, so now we're going to make a pretty big leap from geese in a field to a really fundamental question about human babies. The paper we're looking at here proposes this really compelling idea that we humans have our own kind of imprinting, but it has absolutely nothing to do with our eyes. And that is the million-dollar question, right? We're not like birds. We don't just start following the first thing we see. So if this deep, primal survival instinct is in us too, how on earth does it work? Well, according to this theory, the answer is somewhere you might not expect. The theory is called oral tactile imprinting, and the core idea is pretty straightforward. A human baby's main tool for recognizing its mother isn't sight. It's the incredibly sensitive sense of touch inside its mouth. This, the paper suggests, is where that first absolutely critical bond gets made. So let's get into the biology for a second, because this is really cool. A baby's mouth is packed with these amazing little sensors that basically act like a high-res 3D scanner. They create a super detailed texture map of whatever's in there, picking up on shape, curves, and edges with the kind of sensitivity you'd need to read Braille. It's how the baby literally learns and memorizes the specific feel of its mother.
So this whole process of oral imprinting, it leads to this very distinct emotional stage. And the paper actually gives it a new name to separate it from what we usually think of as bonding. They call it latchment.
Let's break this down, because it's a really important distinction. Latchment is stage 1. It happens from birth to around 6 months old. The baby recognizes its mother through touch, the mother in the mouth. Then you have attachment, which is the idea most of us already know. That comes later. It's the second stage, when the baby starts to visually recognize its mother as a person, the mother in the eye. So you can think of latchment as the foundation that attachment gets built on.
Okay, so if a baby is hardwired to create this detailed texture map, what happens if the object it maps isn't its mother? Well, the paper has a word for that, a decoy. This could be anything, a pacifier, a thumb, a bottle teat, basically anything that stands in for what evolution actually designed. And that brings us to another key concept, displacement. This is what happens when that powerful imprinting instinct gets transferred from the mother's breast onto one of these decoys. The baby's brain, in a way, imprints on the wrong thing. So according to this theory, this one event, whether the baby imprints on the breast or on a decoy, can send the mother and baby down two totally different developmental paths. Let's take a look at what the paper suggests for each of these journeys. First up, we have the optimal path. When a baby imprints on the breast, it kicks off this amazing, positive feedback loop. The baby's getting the best nutrition, the best immune support, and for both mother and baby, there's this surge of oxytocin, the love hormone, that just strengthens their bond. As you can see from this cascade, successful latchment paves the way for secure attachment down the road. It's the system working just like it's supposed to. But what happens if that latchment is displaced onto a decoy? Well, the theory outlines a very different cascade of potential outcomes. It suggests this could lead to nutritional and immunological gaps and even an oxytocin deficit for both mom and baby, which could affect that initial bond.
The theory even goes so far as to link this displacement to potential longer-term challenges with things like attachment, cognitive development, and even emotional regulation.
Okay, so this is a really compelling theory, no doubt. But what does it actually mean for people in the real world? Why does understanding this instinct really matter for new parents and all the people who are there to support them?
Well, the paper gives some really clear, practical advice for what it calls facilitating optimal latchment. And the recommendations all focus on letting that natural imprinting process happen. Things like immediate and continuous skin-to-skin contact, holding off on any decoys during that critical early period, staying physically close, and responding quickly when the baby is distressed. All things that just reinforce that primary bond. And on the flip side, the theory points out things that can get in the way of this instinct. Delaying that first introduction to the breast, restricting access, introducing a decoy too soon, or separating mom and baby. All of these can disrupt the chance for that crucial oral tactile imprint to form the way it was meant to. To really sum it all up, the authors themselves say it perfectly. They argue that this initial imprint isn't just some small detail, they call it the keystone. It's the central piece that supports successful breastfeeding, optimal latchment, and the whole developmental cascade that comes after. And that really just leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If this deep-seated, powerful instinct for oral imprinting is real, how might a better understanding of it completely change our approach to childbirth, to postpartum care, and to the way we support new families during those first few critical hours and months of life?